Hi, my name is Dick Osgood, and welcome to another installment of Lake Minnetonka Association Presents. With me today is Rob Roy, one of our bay captains on St. Albans Bay, but you wear other hats too. You're a board member on Lake Minnetonka Association, so technically you're one of my bosses, and a newly elected council member to the city of Greenwood. Congratulations.
Thank you very much, Dick. It's nice to be here.
Yeah. Today's topic, I need to point out this is the holiday season, so LMCC has kindly provided a fake poinsettia here, one of their large array of fake plants that they bring out different seasons. So, so try to act a little festive. The topic today is a side-by-side comparison between harvesting and the herbicide programs. Rob, you're familiar with both, but as a bay captain for St. Albans Bay, you've been a material participant in fundraising and coordinating your bay. So with that, let's get into it. First slide, please. One of the reasons we're here today is the Lake Minnetonka Conservation District has recently put out a draft comprehensive Eurasian water milfoil and curly-leaf pondweed management plan. We'll call it the plan. And a number of questions have been raised. It's no secret, certainly to me, that the bay captains and members on Lake Minnetonka, the lakeshore residents, clearly prefer the herbicides to the harvesting. So I thought it would be a good time to do a side-by-side comparison of the two. And we're using all data from Lake Minnetonka Conservation District reports from this plan, as well as other reports that are available on their website, as well as the University of Minnesota and the Army Corps of Engineers, who have been the technical advisors to this project. So we think a comparison now is timely. So let's get into it. And just to show, here's the plan I'm talking about. It's available on the Lake Minnetonka Conservation District website. So next slide, please. Let's start out by what is harvesting. Now, this is a picture of a harvester, obviously. It's not the Lake Minnetonka harvester, but most harvesters are built pretty much the same. The underwater cutter bar cuts the plants. Paddle wheels propel the machine forward and maneuver it. The cut plants go up a conveyor and are offloaded onto a transport barge. And they cut about 4 to 5 feet deep and so on. Very straightforward. Harvesting's been around for a long time, around the country and around the world, probably 40 or 50 years. So you've seen harvesters on St. Albans Bay and around the lake, right?
I have, Dick.
Okay. You can't script this stuff, right?
No, you can't.
As opposed to herbicides, next slide, please. This is a picture showing a herbicide applicator, in this case applying a liquid herbicide by a hose or through a hose and nozzle system. Herbicides can be applied in other ways too, as liquids with drop hoses behind the boat for larger scale treatments, what you saw in the picture, smaller scale spot treatments near shores and docks and so on. Or as granular products, usually broadcast off the side of the boat or off the back of the boat. The program we've been doing with the demonstration project that's included St. Albans Bay has used granulars, and the first treatment was in 2011. I've heard from you, but others too, that you've been very happy with that treatment.
Dick, we've been extremely happy with that treatment, especially not having to treat in the second year. It worked so well that we had no reoccurrence in the second year until the end of the season.
And by that reoccurrence, you mean of Eurasian water milfoil?
Of Eurasian water milfoil.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's been largely the experience of the other bays as well. And I know, and Rob, here's our secret. All the bay captains meet from time to time and compare notes and talk about the upcoming year and so on. And that's been the story that the others have shared as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. So let's get into the comparison and start seeing some facts and figures. The harvesting program on Lake Minnetonka is run by the Lake Minnetonka Conservation District. They own the harvesters and contract the operation of them. It's been in place since 1989, and currently they use 3 harvesters, 3 harvesting machines, and that's been the case for, I don't know, 10, 15, maybe even 20 years for most of the program. At one time they had one additional machine. But in the recent past, it's been 3 harvesters and support equipment, transport barges and so on. Compared to herbicides, and here we're talking about herbicides that are selective, meaning they selectively target milfoil, as opposed to what most lakeshore owners do, which are non-selective and kill everything but over a small area. This demonstration project has been a multi-agency effort since 2008 and started with 3 bays, and looking ahead to 2013 will include 6 bays total. So that's the setup. Now how does it work? Next slide. This is a graphic of the harvested and of the herbicide areas. I'm not sure if the key is legible on the TV screen, but basically the yellow shaded areas are the bays that were involved in the herbicide program in 2012. And you see the 5 bays there: Grays, St. Albans, Gideons, Carmens, and Phelps. And the darker colors, red or green, along the lakeshore indicate the areas that had been harvested in 2012. And you see the difference. The bay treatments target the entire bay, and the harvesting targets sections along the shoreline. Next slide, please. So the highlights of the harvesting are the operational of the season is from mid-June to mid-August, usually about 10 weeks or so. The objective is to facilitate navigation. Typically there are 2 cuts per year, and the reason is we know that each cut lasts for about 6 weeks. The university studied, found that out about 20 years ago actually. And for this comparison, I've averaged the 2010 and 2012 years. I dropped out 2011 last year because that's the year that the harvester had capsized and it wasn't a complete year, so not a good basis for comparison. As opposed to herbicides. Next slide. The treatments have been done early in the season, usually late May, plus or minus a couple of weeks, depending on whether it's an early spring or a late spring. They use selective products. They target just milfoil and in some cases curly leaf pondweed. Treatments have been lasting a full season. In the case of the closed bays like St. Albans and Grays, 2 seasons. 2012 is the last year of the demonstration project. So in 2013, we're looking at 6 bays in the program, controlling about 900 total acres. So there are obvious differences. One, the harvesting along the shore versus that cut everything in their path, versus the herbicides, which treat the whole bay or the whole bay that's involved with milfoil. Have you gotten any comments from people on your bay about the difference? Or
One of the big advantages of herbicides, obviously, is cleanup. There is no cleanup with herbicide. If we do have weeds on our lakeshore, they're natural weeds, they belong in the lake, and there's a lot less of it. But every time a harvester comes through, we spend hours cleaning our lakeshore.
Okay, and one of the objectives actually of the demonstration project was to minimize the lakeshore cleanup chore. And the reason that happens is we treat the milfoil early before it gets a chance to accumulate any substance. So there's not much, by the time it's killed with the herbicide, there's not much left to break off and move around anyway. So that's been a gratifying outcome, and I've heard that pretty consistently from people on these bays that have been treated. that whereas in the past they may have had to cart dozens of wheelbarrows on a weekend away from their lakeshore, and now it's minimal, if any.
Another big advantage, Dick, I would also say, is it's opened our bay up for recreational activities. We have a sunken island on our bay that was very rarely used, and now some weekends you'll have 80 people anchoring out there and enjoying it. Mm-hmm. And also facilitates a better skiing pattern or wakeboarding pattern around our bay. Mm-hmm. Milfoil so choked off parts of our bay that it was almost a straight line crossing type of pattern, and it was very dangerous. Milfoil, having it removed, has opened the whole bay up for recreational use.
Yeah, and that too is gratifying to me, and I know to you and others as well. We heard that in 2008 from Grays Bay. St. Albans was just included in the program in 2011 for the first year. But Grays Bay is similar in many regards, and about 4 weeks after the treatment, I got a few calls, complaining about all the use that they were receiving in the bay. What are all these wakeboarders and water skiers doing here? And I had to remind them why that was. Oh yeah, okay, how cool is that? So yeah, that's an obvious benefit as well.
And that's one of the enjoyments of living on the lake, is watching all the activity go on.
Mm-hmm. Well, you have a boat yourself too, right?
I do.
Well, cool. All right. Well, let's continue. So, facts and figures, program costs here. What I've done is just averaged again the years 2012 and 2010 from the LMCD's budgets and stuff that are available online. And then included equipment replacement costs, which is now being recommended by staff as a way to keep the harvesters up to date. They have a limited lifespan like any machine, and so this is about the cost to keep ahead of that. And so the total program is about just short of 133 grand per year. And so that number, I'm going to do a cost per acre comparison in a few slides. That's the basis for that, as well as the 144 acres per year. So that's the math that goes behind the numbers I'll show in a few minutes. Compare that to the next slide, herbicides. The first 4 years of the program, the demonstration program, the total cost was shown here, $507,000 and change, but this is not per year, it's for all 4 years, and for 3 bays, and 3 bays in 4 years, except for Carmen's that didn't participate in 2009, so a total of 1,500 cumulative acres treated over that 4-year period for this cost. That's the basis for the costs I use, again, in 1 or 2 slides coming down the road now. And let's just go to that. Next slide. So what we see in the first line, the number of acres involved in each program, harvesting about 244 acres per year, and that varies year to year, but it's in that neighborhood. And here we're just including what I call the first cut. They do 2 cuts typically, and the second cut is usually less. And often it's reported as the addition of the 2. But really, if you're cutting 1 acre twice, you're still controlling 1 acre, right?
Correct. Matter of fact, when we did our cost analysis, and I presented it to the Greenwood City Council 2 years ago, it's one of the things I noticed in the LMCD reporting is that the accumulative number, I could no more justify an accumulative number versus the flat number. If I have to retreat 10 acres of my 110, I'm still treating 110 acres, not 120.
Right. Right. And it also facilitates or better balances, I think, the comparison. So let's go back to that slide if we can. The 900 acres, not every year in your bay or in any of the bays are all the acres that are controlled actually treated. So let's use your bay as an example. In 2011, we treated, I'm forgetting the exact numbers, but about 100 acres, total treatment.
110.
110, thank you. That's why you're here. But in 2012, this year, we treated 0. Well, does that count as under control? I would say yes.
It absolutely is.
So in that case, we're getting 2 years of control for those 900 acres. Well, no, 110 acres, but that's the same basis I'm using the 900 for all 5 bays. So if you look at the cost per acre, remember a minute ago I mentioned where the math come from. You can see the harvesting at 545 per acre and the herbicides at 333. So there's a cost efficiency there using that as a comparison. The last line, the $247 per acre, is the only number in this whole presentation that comes from me and my wisdom and projection. I think in the future the costs for the herbicide program will go down a bit. And the reason for that is, the first 5 years was a demonstration project. And we learned a few things and did a couple things that probably, in retrospect, we wouldn't do again, which was one of the values of the demonstration. So I think the cost for the herbicide program will actually go down in the future. So this is what it looks like. You've looked at costs as well and that kind of thing relative to the Greenwood City Council.
I have. And one of the things that I could not do a comparison back in those days, 2 years ago, is that there was no cost for equipment in the harvesting program. Now, and I applaud the LMCD for doing this and putting a capital equipment cost of $35,000 annually that needs to be added into the actual cost of doing an acre. Has the LMCD, I don't think the LMCD to this point has done a full cost comparison, have they?
Not that I've seen. They needed to replace the harvester that capsized last year. And so obviously they had to purchase one and were certainly familiar with what that would cost. They actually paid it and worked with insurance and so on. And I expect that's where this $35,000 came from, is as they looked into the future, the oldest machine would come up for replacement at some point just to normal wear and tear and lifespan issues. So it does make sense.
Very much so.
Yeah, and it's a program cost and all the rest and that needs to be weighed in with all of this. So that's what we're looking at. The plan that's been put forward, again, I'll show it here, but it's available on the LMCD website, recommends harvesting and herbicides lake-wide as the two tools to be used for controlling milfoil on Lake Minnetonka. And that plan, and one of the appendices also includes some comparisons. And the next slide shows those. I've abbreviated these. The full report has more categories and longer descriptions, but I apply my daughter's 6x6 rule on PowerPoint slides, so I'd have to answer to her if I had more words than this. But what we see is that the duration of comparing the two of control is shorter for harvesting, longer for herbicides. Fragments, more, less for harvesting versus herbicides. Cost, and I think we've just illustrated that, higher for harvesting, lower for herbicides. When does the control occur and the management activity? Harvesting is throughout the season, as I said, beginning usually in mid-June and going through mid-August. Although one of the things we've noticed is that milfoil grows through September, and the boating season goes through September. So longer season control is usually beneficial. And fish, actually it's abbreviation for fish, invertebrates, wildlife, so on and so forth. The harvesting kills fish, and herbicides do not. We heard at the, about a year ago, the Watershed District sponsored an invasive plant expert panel. And one of the experts at that time says harvesting is the only permitted plant management technique that kills fish, and quite a number of them. Enough to have an impact? I don't think so, but we often hear, herbicides, kill stuff. They certainly kill milfoil, but not much else. And we don't talk about, I'm not going to talk about safety here, we don't have enough time, but I've done that before, and we, the Lake Minnetonka Association, believe herbicides are safe and effective. What do you think?
I totally agree. As a matter of fact, with the herbicide that we used, we started watering right away at our house. Before we'd wait. Obviously, we don't water the annuals, but it didn't bother the perennials one bit.
Yeah. I will point out, wearing my legalistic hat here, the label on the herbicide we've been using does require or does have a watering restriction. The triclopyr, or Renovate is the trade name that we've been using in this program, requires a posting for a watering restriction on annual plants, newly seeded lawns, and so on, until the residue goes below a certain level. And that's been about 5 or 6 weeks. That said, I've had a number of reports saying people have fudged on that a little bit with no apparent impact to their plants. So I think it's a conservative restriction, but we're required to post it and so on. And one last note here. There are some limitations. It's not a strict apples to apples comparison. Herbicides that we've been using necessarily are a large scale application. Spot treatments such as the harvesting would be, or spot or very narrow band treatments, really aren't an option with this tool. Or at least they aren't that effective. The cost goes way up because to get the same level of control, you basically have to treat a 3 or 4 times larger area. So when you can contain it in the bay, that's where the economies come. But on the other hand, the herbicide program does have a substantial private funding element to it. And so overall, the differential then becomes a bit of a wash. Now we can talk about, although in the 2 minutes we have left, not too lengthy, about the equity of that. And part of the LMCD's plan does propose a new funding mechanism that hasn't been fully road tested yet, and that's been one of the concerns. And then, as I mentioned, we're not going to talk about herbicide safety today. We can, and we have on previous shows, but we believe it's safe.
I do too, Dick, but going back to the funding mechanism, it would be our hope in the long or in the near-term future that I lose my job as a bay captain. That this is a totally 100% funded program. We have a great, well, matter of fact, 57% of the current contributions to this program are coming from citizens for the common good of all. And eventually, we would like to see this fully funded.
As would we, and I think that makes sense. And as you pointed out, one of the obvious reasons is the bay is now usable for everyone. And this is a public lake, and I applaud you and your bay captain colleagues and all the people who have made voluntary private contributions to make this program successful. In the long run, I agree, and the Lake Minnetonka Association agrees, that this is a public project, and more public funding is appropriate. So we'll be working for that.
Perfect.
Any last minute thoughts?
I have none. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, yeah, thank you. And as always, we've come right up to our end, and The crew here will show contact information. If you have questions or want to contact the Lake Minnetonka Association, we encourage you to do that. So thank you, Rob.
Thank you, Dick.
Glad you came.
Appreciate it.